VIP System. Chapter 2. Reincarnation. Eman's consciousness flickered as he slowly began to open his eyes. A bright light flooded his vision, and he blinked several times, trying to make sense of his surroundings. As his vision cleared, he stared at a wooden ceiling constructed from neatly placed logs interlocked perfectly to form a rustic yet sturdy cover. Confusion washed over him. The last thing he remembered was the white van crashing into him. His mind raced with possibilities. Was he in a hospital? He attempted to sit up, but his body felt strange and uncoordinated. He looked around and realized he was inside a wooden cage. Panic set in as he wondered if he had been arrested or worse. Trying to call out, Eman found that he couldn't form any words. All that came out were incoherent sounds. He realized he couldn't speak properly and started to hyperventilate. Before he could dwell on his situation further, he saw movement from the corner of his eye. A woman walked by, and Eman's breath caught in his throat. She was stunning, with long, flowing white hair that shimmered like moonlight cascading down her back. Her skin was flawless alabaster, smooth and glowing with an otherworldly radiance. She wore a simple camisole, an old-fashioned garment that clung to her form, its loose side revealing a significant portion of her left breast. Her figure was voluptuous yet graceful, with curves that seemed to be sculpted by the gods themselves. As she noticed him, she smiled warmly, and Eman felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. Her eyes, a deep, mesmerizing red, sparkled with kindness and curiosity. She placed the tray she was carrying, which held bread and milk, on a table across the room, and then approached him. "Good morning, little one," she greeted him, her voice both seductive and filled with empathy. The melodious tone of her voice radiated warmth and love, making Eman feel strangely at ease despite his confusion and fear. She bent down and carefully picked him up, holding him close to her chest. His face almost touched her exposed skin, and he felt a flush of embarrassment mixed with awe. The scent of morning flowers enveloped him, calming his racing heart. He could feel the softness of her skin and was captivated by the gentle rise and fall of her breath. She carried him to the table and sat down, holding him in her lap as she began to eat. Eman was mesmerized. Everything about her screamed goddess: her voice, her radiant red eyes, her soft skin. He felt an overwhelming sense of happiness and wondered if he had somehow ended up in heaven. His consciousness began to fade, and just before he drifted back to sleep, he caught a glimpse of her pointed ears. "Elf?" he thought, a smile forming on his lips as he succumbed to sleep. Hours passed, and Eman woke up again. This time, the woman seems to be changing clothes. She had her back to him, and he watched as she slipped out of her camisole and into a dress. When she finally donned her dress, he saw that it was adorned with patches, a clear sign of age and constant repairs. The dress was visibly smaller than her frame, barely reaching her knees and revealing much of her legs. She pulled her hair back into a loose ponytail and walked over to him. "I need to work," she said softly, "but I'll be back before evening." She hung 2 bottles of milk inside his crib and apologized for not being able to stay with him. Eman noticed her nipples pressing against the fabric of her dress and felt a pang of concern for her going outside dressed like that. She stood up, adjusted her dress, and picked up a pike, shovel, and a pair of gloves by the door. Waving at him with a smile, she stepped outside, closing the door gently behind her. Eman now understood why his body felt a bit thin. It wasn't that she wasn't taking care of him. It was more that she didn't know how to do it properly. The image of the milk bottles hanging in his crib made him chuckle. As he thought about it, the reality of his situation hit him. He had died and been reincarnated into this new world. Feeling a gnawing hunger, Eman reached for one of the milk bottles. It took several tries, but he eventually managed to grab it. He propped himself up with a pillow against the wall of the crib and started to drink, his mind racing with thoughts about his new life and the mysterious elf woman who cared for him. He wanted to check the outside world, but his tiny body made it impossible. He even struggled to pick up the bottle near him. As he lay there, he began to hear muffled voices outside. People were talking, birds were chirping, and he heard the rhythmic sound of something hitting the soil. Ah, farming, huh? He thought, gently nodding. His eyes widened when he recalled that he was reincarnated in another world. Excitement bubbled within him. What if he could do magic? His heart pounded as he raised his tiny arms upward and thought, "Fireball!" He waited, his arm still raised. Nothing happened. Undeterred, he continued to name skills from games and anime he had played and watched. Itical Lance! Win Guts! Bediever? Nothing happened. Slowly, he lowered his arm, the excitement giving way to disappointment. He realized he was just as ordinary here as he had been in his previous life. His thoughts drifted back to the woman's pointed ears. Maybe his powers would awaken as he grew older. He tried to reach his ears, but upon feeling them, he realized they were normal. So he wasn't an elf either. Puzzled, he wondered why the woman was taking care of him. He remembered the kittens and what Sheila had told him about regret. A mix of emotions stirred within him. Regret for not taking the kittens and relief that they hadn't died with him. He decided that he would repay the kindness of the woman caring for him by looking after her in return, once he was able to. He felt a sense of resolve as he laid back, pondering his new life. He would grow up, become strong, and repay the woman for her kindness. In this new world, he had another chance, and he intended to make the most of it. Determined, Eman tried to mimic a grown-up's determination. He took a big gulp from the bottle of milk, feeling a bit more powerful with each swallow. Then, with newfound resolve, he raised his tiny fists in the air. Awah! As he did, the bottle of milk tipped over and rolled away inside his crib. Eman's eyes followed the bottle, widening in surprise and confusion. He tried to reach for it, but ended up toppling over onto his side instead.